أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. All praise to the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and salutations and peace be upon the Prophet and his blessed progeny. Alhamdulillah, we've gathered here today virtually on this Thursday night, and as mentioned in the email, that we are commemorating the Ayyam Fatimiyyah, the days of the martyrdom of Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha. Inshallah, starting with this program tonight, I'll request my dear brother Miqdad Huda, to start with the recitation of a short surah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يأمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يأمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. That was our dear brother Miqdad Huda reciting the Surah Al-Zilzilah. And now I'll request brothers Ilyas Alizi and brother Miqdad Huda to inshallah recite Surah Yasin. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آيات من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون واليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون لهم ألم أهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يأقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينشرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناهم من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Alhamdulillah, we had the recitation of the holy word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the form of multiple chapters by our dear brothers, brother Ilyas Elizi and brother Miqdad Huda. And now in order to commence with the recitation of Dua al-Kumail, I request my dear brothers Ali Mahboubi and Yusuf Rahman, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط به كل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحتك العصام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنعني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلحمني ذكرك اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وضحر أمرك وغلب قحرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاتح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سهالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفع بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجبك عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أحوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد هدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى عليه في قضاءك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مطعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغطيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولحج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع مرعى ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من آويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خوت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادها وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوار سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طاععا وأشارت باستغفارك مضعنا ما هكذا ظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب يا كريم يا رب يا كريم يا رب وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن عظمك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الضليل الحقير المسكين المستكين يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدتي أم لطول البلاء ومدتي فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآمنين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية أعمال العارفين صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا هبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أتباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يذج إليك لجيجا مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو السلاف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تولهمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وتراك مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجر زبانيته وهو يناديك يا ربه؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات مزالك ذنوبك؟ ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به المواهدين من برك وإحسانك، فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمته به من تعذيب جاهدك، فقضيت به من إخراج معانديك. لا جعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد في مقرا ولا مقامه، لكنك تقدست أسماء أقسمت أن تملها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجلى ثناؤك. قلت مبتدئا وتولت بالإنعام متكرما، أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي هتمتها وحكمت وغلبت من عليه أجريته، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة في هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته، كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي ماء جواره، وكنت أنت رقيبا علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته، وأن توفر هذه من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فزلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناسيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعزم صفاتك واسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي إنك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وهالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه مؤولي يا من إليه شكوت أهوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على الأزيمة جوانه وهب لي الجد في خشيتك ودوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أصره إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسري إليك في المبارزين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وادنوا من دنو المخلصين وخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جواره ماء المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكد وأجعلني من أحسن عبيدك ناسبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك وعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بجبك مطيما ومنا علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجد لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله رجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالم لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. الفاتحة. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. As it was mentioned in the email, today we will be commemorating from the days of Fatimiyyah, commemorating the martyrdom of the beloved daughter of the beloved Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lady of Light, Zahra alayha salatu wassalam. And we convey these condolences to the Prophet for his daughter and his progeny, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and extending these condolences to all lovers of Ahlul Bayt, lovers of Zahra salamullahi alayha across the globe. Alhamdulillah, we were able to hold the recitations, and we were able to hear these recitations and make these recitations, hear these recitations. May Allah have a special mercy on these beautiful voices of our young brothers, Brother Miqdad Huda, Brother Ilyas Alisi, Brother Yusuf Rahman, Brother Ali Mahboubi. May Allah accept these acts of worship on behalf of these brothers, their respective families, and all the community members and the marhumin, inshallah. For the acceptance of our dua, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, today we will have with us Sayyid Mohammedhassan Alsheraa, who will be addressing today's majlis. And before I request the dear brother, inshallah, I'd like to recite a few poetic verses. And this poem has been penned down by Sheikh Mohammedhassan Mohammedhassan, who writes this or titles this poem as the May I Be Your Neighbor. And as the famous tradition regarding Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha, that Sheikh Saduq has narrated this in his Alsheraa, where the children heard their mother praying and mentioning the names of different people, and she would pray for them abundantly. And then they said, Ya Ummah, lima la tad'ina li nafsik kama tad'ina li ghayrik, that why do you not pray, O mother, for yourself as you pray for others? And she replied, Ya bunayya, O my dear son, Ajjar thumma dar, the neighbor and then the household. And so, inshallah, reciting these poetic verses by Shaykh Mohammedhassan, who writes, May I be your neighbor. Your blessed tasbih ceased to spin this night. Till now we are unaware of your true right. Heartbroken and doleful you left this world, indignities and ignominies upon you hurled. Your crime, warning of the impending deviation. Alas, this was to be the trend of Ahmad's nation. My tears flow not for that, for with God rests that decree. Rather pierces my soul your kindness and generosity. The neighbor before one's house was your beautiful and profound prayer. And so I wonder, will you intercede for this nondescript in my affair? Because deprived I was of being your neighbor in this life. And so you think, my lady, I might be yours in my afterlife. But what perforates my spirit and causes my heart to profusely bleed is even in your last moments you showed me how to bask and revel in the secrets of Tawheed. That even in your last moments you showed me how to bask and reveal in the secrets of Tawheed. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farjah. Inshallah, a few more poetic verses of Masaib of Lady Zahra salamullahi alayha. She would cry on her, we know that she would cry on her father's grave, and she would cry after her father. That indeed of my father, so affliction, so many tragedies that afflicted me, that if they were to fall upon bright days, they would turn into dark nights. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Hai Baba, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाय बाबा, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाय बाबा, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। कैसे दरवाजा हटाऊं, कैसे मोहसिन को बचाऊं, सांस सीने में रुकी है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाय बाबा, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाथ में जिसके मेरा हाथ दिया था तुमने, कह के मन कुंतु जिसे मौला कहा था तुमने। मैंने हर मोड़ पे बाबा साथ उसका है निभाया। हाँ मेरा जुर्म यही है, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाय बाबा, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। तेरी उम्मत ने बना दी है ये हालत बाबा, कोई पसली भी मेरी नहीं सलामत बाबा। सांस लेती हूँ मैं जिस दम, घुटने लगता है मेरा दम, सिर्फ मरने की कमी है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाय बाबा, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। कभी दरबार में पेशी को बुलाते हैं हमें, कभी दरवाजे पे आके सताते हैं हमें। मेरे ये फूल से बचे पूछते हैं यही मुझसे, क्या खता हमसे हुई है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाय बाबा, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। शर्म आती है भला तुमको बताऊं कैसे, ये तमाचों के निशान तुमको दिखाऊं कैसे। तुम न पहचान सकोगे, देख कर मुझसे कहोगे, क्या मेरी ज़हरा यही है। तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। हाय बाबा, तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की घड़ी है। ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, without any further ado, I'd like to request my dear brother and my dear Sayyid, inshallah, to address this majlis. Before I request him, inshallah, as we had received this news of the loss of relatives of our community members, starting with Brother Murtaza Ali's uncle and Sister Shama Murtaza's uncle as well, Marhum Ghulam Sajjad Debraj, who passed away in England, and also the passing away in Kenya of the uncle of Brother Sultan Huda, Sultan uncle, who was Marhum Ibrahim Qasim, who passed away in Kenya today. Inshallah, if you can recite Al-Fatiha for these marhumin, and inshallah all the ulama Allah, Muraj Karam who have left this world, the Shuhada of Islam, and especially for those who don't have anyone left in this world, to recite Al-Fatiha for them. Bismillahir Rahman. And now, inshallah, I'll request our dear Sayyid Mohammedhassan Alsheraa to inshallah address this majlis. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد حبيب إله العالمين أبا القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we transition from this year to the start of a new year, we remember Lady Fatimiyyah Zahra alayha salam. What better way to begin the next year by beginning with remembering the daughter of the man who came as a mercy to the universe and to the entire world and to all the realms that the Lord has created. The daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam has not been appreciated as she deserves. When we look into the pages of history and examine her life, albeit a short one, we cannot help but see it riddled with misfortune, calamity, and tragedy. And this paints to us a picture of someone who endured and resisted and managed to hold back anguish and make it out as a legendary figure for years to come and for millions to remember and honor. But to truly do justice to any historic figure, we have to understand and study the motives behind the decisions that led them to making the choices that we, as followers of the man who brought this religion, of his daughter, of his successor, we need to look at the motives behind these individuals and why they decided to make certain decisions, of which we honor and venerate and revere to the highest degree. We do not come from a worldview, being followers and lovers of Ahlul Bayt, that subscribes to the notion of respect is given by merit of association, by the factor of interrelations, whether it's within a society, intersocial relationships. You might have a very good relationship with an individual out there. And we've seen this habit emerge. If you want to get closer to your target, you have to, and this is a natural tendency, you have to begin by approaching the surroundings of that particular whatever person or goal in mind. The aim is large, but it takes baby steps to approach. This works in a similar fashion when it comes to understanding who deserves reverence. It works in that way, but it's not supposed to be this way. So, for example, we have person X who is a good human being, wonderful human being, contributed so much to humanitarianism. And we're talking outside of religiosity, because you don't need to be necessarily religiously centric to do humanitarian things, albeit you have to be from a perspective that understands value is not given by human beings and mankind, versus value comes from a higher order, which is why you are doing good. Otherwise, it doesn't matter to you. If we're all animals at the end of the day, and it's a matter of survival of the fittest, basic biology, if that's all there ever was, then I am not compelled to do good, because you don't necessarily have intrinsic value. What tells me and teaches me that I have intrinsic value as a human being is the Lord above who created me. But for the longest time period, even until today, slavery was observed as something completely justified, something completely rational, something completely normal and accepted and allowed, and was part and parcel of basic morality. It was moral. It was something that, human beings saw as easy to do, and until recently with civil rights movements and movements that aim to bring down racism and the power of the tyranny that can just destroy a society from a moral perspective. This is what's morally allowed when God is taken from the framework. Versus today, when we look at individuals, we must look at them from the sense of God has given everyone intrinsic value. Everyone is deserving of a sense of dignity that is at a default level of dignity. This comes from the lens and perspective of faith, not necessarily faith, but from understanding that there's an organized system that works in your favor that allows individuals to hone in on their mission in life prescribed by God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that dignity to everyone. Starts with the human being, and we have the highest level of dignity. And sorry, just let me. We have the highest level of dignity when the New Year's is about to happen. You get too many messages, and if you don't put your phone on silence, you're going to get a distraction that you would wish you never had a phone to begin with. Why are they messaging now? It's like, okay, hold on, we still have a few more hours until the New Year's happens. But nonetheless, may Allah allow us to not be distracted any longer. Alhamdulillah, it's on silent now. But because everyone has been ordained that karama and dignity, everyone deserves respect. Do people give or get a sense of respect that is a bit higher than others? Sometimes yes, based on our conduct. A person respects themselves, respects others around them. I aim to get closer to that individual. Why do I then respect the individuals surrounding them? If they have akhlaq that is not necessarily good, by virtue of them being near such an individual, that gives me the motive to respect all those surrounding them. It's a good sign to see that, well, if they occupy qualities and features that I admire, surely those around them would also have these same qualities and features. And that's not necessarily the case. And the odds of them adopting the main individual you're interested in, that you want to emulate, the odds of this person's surroundings, from followers to students to disciples to relatives, that they might be influenced by that individual is a bit more, is increased than someone who isn't necessarily related at all. We from the school of Ahlul Bayt don't necessarily believe in this, because and we'll use Rasulullah as the example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His surroundings are those that have people who would stay with the Prophet through thick and thin, I don't take my respect for the Prophet and adopt it to them by default of their closeness, proximity, their relationship. The odds that they might be affected by their worldview, by their way of life, by their teachings that have also inspired me are a little bit more than the individual who has no relation to them. But that doesn't guarantee anything, because I need to see practice. I need to witness no proof of wrongdoing, of transgression. Combining these two, I will then give and grant that same sense of respect. Dignity is always there. Every creation has dignity, brothers and sisters, and must be addressed. Dignity has to be revered and acknowledged a little bit more for specific individuals, however. Let's say, for example, your parents. You will show every parent respect, equal a default amount of respect. The elder gives a bit more, gets a bit more, shows more, and at the same time expects more by default of them being the elder, being someone more experienced in life, having gone through the thick and thin, the hard times, the easy times, and having had that experience to share it with others. They deserve more. They're frail, they're fickle, they might be at times unable to manage independently, so they are dependent on many others around them. That makes an individual more inclined to just honoring them without necessarily having additional reasons by default of them being elders. So by default, everyone has a set amount of dignity from the Shi'i perspective, obviously. Then there are individuals that have a bit more. Applying this principle with the family of the Prophet, do we then just give Rasulullah's relatives the same dignity we gave Rasulullah? No, because the Quran showed us multiple examples that there are relatives of prophets who can be transgressors. ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط. And in other verses, well, this one in particular, Prophet Noah, his wife was an example of those who disbelieved. Prophet Lut, wife was a kafira. Another example, the son of Nuh. Another example, the son of Adam. These are ma'sumin. And their surroundings, one would imagine you're the son of a prophet. You are the wife of a prophet. You are the daughter of a prophet. Yeah, that's good. We expect more from them. We expect that they would behave in a really tolerable manner that comes naturally by being associated with someone. So the expectation is there. And this is a natural tendency that many human beings have. That's why when many people transgress, unfortunately, at times, what do we see happening? Depending on their level of relationship towards a person of significance, socially, communally, we then employ that they really never make an atom's weight of an error. The daughter of a scholar, the son of a very business-centric individual who's very successful, and they then go and misbehave, and they go and tarnish not only their reputation, others. Unfortunately, society likes to do this double scrutiny. First, I will tarnish you, and I'll look at your association. If it's in relation to someone that naturally the community gave them so much respect, there's going to be even more pressure on you. And that's what we found happen in, oh, by the way, is this necessarily just? Not necessary at all. Why would someone get double the punishment because of their association? And we don't give them double the reward because of their association. It has to be the same way. Yes, there's an expectation, but it's never the case that this is the way things have to be, the way they are. They have to be this way. No, we use our intellect such that we address everyone justly, fairly. We saw this happen with Lady Maryam, alayha salam. As-Sayyidah Maryam, when she returned back, and you have this lady who's not married, and she's holding a child. The first thing they said is, how could you? Your father was a good man. He wasn't a wretched man. So was your mother. So do you see the dynamic? because of your association to such great people, we did not have that expectation for you. But you coming back and you see you're someone who never got married and you have a child, instantly the community is like, if I don't remember you having your nikah, where are you getting that kid from? And you are insinuating this is your kid. Everyone's going to assume that, well, the worst has to happen. The worst happened. But in addition to that, what do human beings do? They take their association and they're like, in addition to that, you're also related to that person. And ask yourself this question. Do we do that at times? Do we have more expectation on others? Do we expect them and we have this hope that they will fulfill every expectation we do? And if they do something wrong, compared to someone who doesn't have their association of significance, let's say, of social, communal, even religious significance, but when they do something wrong, why are they forgotten the next day? And that act and whatever was associated with them, that tarnish that they had in their reputation, is temporary. But when someone comes from a background that is of a background of highly respected individuals, when they do something wrong, they are attacked from every angle until they die because of who they were related to. So if we don't want that to happen any longer, then we shouldn't tarnish anyone in an additional or with access because of who they're related to. Like we don't respect anyone and access additionally because of who they're related to. The royal family, the presidential family. Yeah, I might respect one individual in that category because of what they've contributed, what they represent. But why do I necessarily have to be someone who shares the same vision and approach to every one of them? It was one person that I really respect. Why all of them? There's a sense of reverence that's there. Royalty, by default of being royal. Which is why, hey, if you're born, if you win the genetic, not the genetic lottery, if you win the birth lottery and you just happen to be birthed into a family that was a royal family, none of your actions gained you respect. It's just who you're related to. We don't want to be that type of person. That we give respect, additional respect to someone who doesn't really deserve it, but will receive a default amount of respect due to their default amount of dignity. Nor do we want to be someone at the same time who's just earning respect for no reason. It's like having 1,000 fake friends. 2 of them are genuine. You can have that number on Facebook. Say if you have 5,000 friends, it might look impressive, but how many of them will be with you when push goes to shove? It looks like, wow, this person has a lot of followers and subscribers to them, to what they're doing and to their projects and to their activities. They have a lot of names associated, and a big number associated with their name. If I will respect any page right now, it would be the one with the biggest number. But I don't want to be that individual knowing that when I sleep, I might have a lot of numbers. Not one of them genuinely cares about me. It's because I happen to be the son of the queen or the son of the king. We have kings and queens alive today. We also have sovereignties, kingships. And that's why in Islam, there is no such thing as an Islamic royalty. None, that doesn't exist. That's why we disagree with the Wahhabi worldview in that أول ملوك الإسلام معاوية ibn Abi Sufyan, that the first kings of Islam, and they justify king here because Muawiyah is a companion of the Holy Prophet, and companions are by default deserving of integrity. And we have established that that's not necessarily the case from a logical point of view, from a just point of view. Where's the justice in that? And so Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan was the first king of Islam. There are kings and there are khulafa. Why? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen during his time period was the Khalifa. So there can never be Khalifatan in one moment. So what do you then call Muawiyah if you come from a worldview that respects such an individual? Because he can't be a Khalifa, so in the eyes of Allah, he's the king. So he's the first king. And then when we have kings, we know how royalty works. their whole surrounding is encompassed with royalty, lavishness, and that respect that comes out of nowhere. Yeah, because of your association. And perhaps not a surprise to see why then that reverence is then transferred from Muawiyah to his son Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Oh, he's the son of the king of Islam. Where did this come from? If anything, the Quran came to reverse that type of behavior and thinking. Applying this principle with the household of the Prophet, many Muslims respect the family of the Prophet because of their association to the Prophet. Really, there's not much merit to them from their worldview in accordance to how they perceive family members of Rasulullah. Lady Fatima Zahra alayhi salam is the biggest example to this. One may argue that the wives of the Prophet have narrated in the hundreds. And one may argue that the son-in-law of the Prophet, how much has he accomplished for us? But Lady Zahra alayhi salam, she is respected because of her lineage. We have intellectual academic thinkers who speak in this manner. Yeah, Dr. Yasir Qadhi, a notable intellectual, contemporary scholar, studies in Al-Madinah, and a graduate of Yale University. A recent tweet, paraphrasing it, summarizing it from my mind, that in the comparison between Sayyidah Fatima Zahra and Aisha bint Abi Bakr, who is more significant and greater? There was that comparison. First of all, there's no comparison. Aisha is the daughter of Abu Bakr. Fatima is the daughter of Muhammad. If we're always going to be talking about this association factor. And then the explanation came as such from the following individual, Dr. Yasir Qadhi, that well, Fatima Zahra is from a line that is a prestigious line of nobility, of significance. Her daughter's Rasulullah. But then Aisha is a scholar, narrated multiple ahadith, and may not necessarily have that line in ancestry, but both of them are wonderful assets to the community. That logic is an intellectual fallacy to the highest degree. Because what we're saying at that point is, I'm respecting you because of your lineage. Then what if they have a bad apple from that lineage? Are they getting respected? Because the good apple and the bad apple share the same dang lineage. At that point, what do we do to the bad apple? So the bad example, the bad son or daughter, but from a very wonderful lineage. How can that be the case if the lineage was good? We had a lot of examples of wonderful family members. Then you might have a bad individual come about. A bad meaning an individual who was in not protest, but contested the worldview of their family. Qabil totally contested. The revelation came to Adam stating that Habil is the successor to you. I contest that. So there's a level of acknowledgement. No, I believe in this leadership aspect coming from God, but I just don't believe it's him. So he fought his brother, he killed his brother. So there's not a protest to the worldview, but he did something bad, that was evil, he contested it. What do we do to that? Because the man's lineage or something special? That perspective and that approach doesn't make me want to respect anyone any more than the default that I gave everyone else respect from my own eyes, my own two eyes, just because they're royal, because they're sovereign. And if the royal family, the queen is tuning in, my utmost respects to you. I apologize for that, because she's definitely tuning in, and so is the kings and the future queens and the kings and whatever. But life is not a life worth living if by doing nothing and not achieving anything, people will just clamor over you and make you king and queen for no good reason and love you for no good reason. You have to work in this life. Some people are predisposed, yes, predisposed to having it a bit easier. If you have it a bit easier than others who actually have to struggle to get an education, but you have to fly and go through war-torn countries and situations and circumstances just to land in a society that's safe, you sought refuge, and then you can get an education. If you are the former and not the latter, then there's more expectation upon you. Well, you have all these opportunities. Don't forget where your parents came from. Many of our wonderful community members tuning in, their family had to come from Kenya had to come from India, to come from Pakistan, Iraq, Lebanon, and you're not talking, with all due love and respect to all those regions, Iraq being one of them, my country, not the most developed of nations and regions, war-torn at times. Some of them war-torn until today, they've never seen a day of peace. And when the family has to leave that, and then finally they have sanctuary and safety, it is very dissatisfying, one can even say, to see that the children who don't take advantage of this, or even the family members, of all the opportunities and blessings that they have at their disposal, once getting established and settled. Whereas someone who does have all of these, someone who does have these opportunities, if they don't take advantage of all of these moments and all of these blessings that they have in their life, then that is an additional dissatisfaction from those around them and watching. When you make that comparison, someone had to go through the far ends of the globe to come and achieve the life that you were just born into, and yet you don't even acknowledge it by taking advantage of it, then there's an unfortunate reality emerging there. In this life, people put effort to earn what they deserve, not get it because by default they simply deserve it. By default, everyone has a stable level of dignity, being the insan. And our dignity comes not from us, comes from Allah. And Allah said in the Quran, we made you men and women. Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. That's done. Nations and tribes. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, to get to know one another. Inna akramakum, the best amongst you. And Allah, to Allah's eyes, is the most God conscious, God aware. So you all have a fixed level of dignity. You can excel and get higher with that, but that's with your level of awareness and God consciousness. God consciousness is humanitarianism, because this is what being conscious in Allah means. Being aware that this is what God wants from you, what He expects from you. Transitioning this to Lady Fatimah Zahra and the approach that many unfortunately have when it comes to giving her reverence. Look, it's great that still reverence and respect is given, because definitely this individual deserves this. But what are your reasons for this? What are your reasons for deciding, I'm just gonna love this individual? Is it by association because she is the wife of X, the daughter of Y, the mother of Z? Is that the case? Because we can have many examples of people who are like this. And then there are bad people related to great people, but they themselves are not good in human beings. In this religion, what have you produced? Let me see your actions, and I need to study the motives. Because some people do good things in life, but their intention was hypocrisy. In Surah Al-Ma'un, we find that example presented as well. That فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ. Woe upon those who pray. Prayer is something wonderful. Why, Allah, are you saying woe upon them? Condemned almost are those who go to prayer. The next ayah, those who when they go to pray, they do it not for genuine purpose. So their action was good, the motive was bad. So the action is not enough. You might have an individual in Islamic history that does amazing things, but their motive was completely hypocritical. Their motive was so totally just for the purpose of getting people's approval, not Allah's approval. Couldn't care less about other people. It's just a matter of, I need to satisfy you enough, so I'm going to distribute goods to you. I'm going to donate to you. I need to look good. I need my reputation. The moment I have what I want, couldn't care less to give. Al-Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi, one of the caliphs that ruled during the time period of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, a very tyrannical ruler, Al-Hajjaj in Iraq. He, when they told him the news that he now became the Khalifa after the predecessors, the Khulafa who ruled, after they passed away, they had made it clear that the successor would be Al-Hajjaj. This is the Umayyad dynasty. Al-Hajjaj was reading Quran. You know, when you read Quran and you're at the masjid and people are watching, it looks good. And we always assume the best in this life, that individual is reading to get closer to Allah. We're not ever going to assume to show off. Al-Hajjaj got the Quran and they told him that you have now become Khalifatullah fi ardih, fi ardihi. Al-Hajjaj looked at the Quran, and you guys know the ayah in Surah Al-Kafirun, the story of Prophet Musa and the companion of Musa, Sahib Musa. And after Musa continues to question his actions and not just actions, motives as well. And then he constantly has to remind him, أَلَمْ أَقُولُ لَكَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِي صَبْرًا. At the end, when he asks him a third time, why did you do this? The companion of Musa said what? هَذَا فِرَاقٌ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is the time, at this moment, this is when I'm going to separate from me and you. I'm going to separate. Al-Hajjaj, when he was told, hey, you're now the Khalifa, he looks at the Quran, he literally says, هَذَا فِرَاقٌ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. Close, never opened the Quran until he died. The whole entire time he was showing off. I can imagine people are looking like, man, this guy, all he does is read the Holy Book of God. That's impressive. Some people are probably thinking, well, hold on. It looks good. But we always hope that his motives are good. Motives were clearly never good. So there are actions that are great. But it's always worth to solidify that the actions were genuine. You have to look at the motives. Lady Zahra alayhi salam, in Shi'i theology, to us is revered by degree of her being a woman in the society within Medina and Mecca. So we have that basic default degree. In addition to that, there is also expectation that not just that, if you're from the line of the scholar of scholars, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you can't but help to think that you would also share that knowledge as well. It's not an obligatory expectation, but it's a rational expectation. And so there's that respect in the sense of the blood you have in your veins, Lady Zahra salamullahi alayha, is blessed. Rasulullah carries that, Nabi Ibrahim carries that. And so, but this is a factor that is 1 to 1,000. We only respect people because of their association to the smallest degree ever. In the sense of, I respect all human beings, but there's always going to be a natural inclination to respect those that their family has only shown nothing but goodness. And so there's a rational expectation. But my respect being contingent on your association to the Prophet doesn't exist. Then it's your stances, Lady Zahra, and this is where the majority, 99.8% of the reverence that the lovers of Ahlul Bayt have for Sayyidah Zahra comes from what she did, what she stood for, what she did, what she said. Lady Zahra salamullahi alayha exemplified many things. The biggest of them are education and resistance and bravery. These three things, when combined, you have a very qualified leader. And so she's a leader for all of us. There are heroes in history, but there are also heroines in history. Female leaders, women leaders, exemplars, beacons of hope and inspiration. And Lady Zahra occupies that for us. And it's amazing to see that such a strong lady, it's not a surprise at the same time, almost inherits this quality from her very strong and independent mother as well, from her strong and independent father as well. And that expectation of, well, we would assume that the offspring of such a wonderful family would be this way, was way beyond just met. It was solidified in stone for all of history to go back and appreciate. At the time, Lady Zahra, with regards to education, she was a source of knowledge for everyone in the community, male and female. Predominantly the women, because the women need that source as well. Many times there are issues women-centric only, related to women, that maybe if a scholar has the answers towards such an issue that pertains femininity, for example, that women will not necessarily feel as comfortable to approach a man to address. I have this personal issue, but it's exclusively in regards to women's only issues. It would be a lot more comfortable if there was a scholar lady around such that other women can easily approach. Likewise, when a man has male-related issues, if the scholar was a female, you think he's going to be comfortable approaching the lady? I mean, if he can get her answer from her, then he might feel compelled to. Otherwise, he's not that comfortable. But if it's another man and he's a man, they resonate. And if there's a woman scholar and she's a student trying to learn and better herself, and she approaches another woman, it's easier that way. But that doesn't mean, by the way, that men cannot teach women and women cannot teach men. The majority of the time, men will always, by nature of being able to grab and gravitate men to them, will draw more men near them. And likewise goes for women. But then there are cases where there's that mix happening. And we find Lady Zahra being a teacher to both men and women, predominantly women, but that doesn't mean men cannot benefit. Where do we find these examples? We find it with regards to the collection Lady Zahra had in her possession. Lady Zahra had 4 remarkable things in her possession that are miracles, to be honest. The first is Mushaf Fatimah, the encyclopedia, the compendium of Lady Fatimah Zahra, Mushaf Fatimah. This was received after Rasulullah passed away, after Rasulullah left this world, by Lady Fatima from the angel Jibreel alayhi salam. And Rasulullah gave it to Lady Zahra. In it, it foretold the future. What will happen to her, her family, her children, and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, and the far future as well, according to the books of history regarding Mushaf Fatima, the work of Fatima Zahra sent by the heavens. One might argue, how can an angel approach a non-prophet? Or the same way Jibreel approached Sayyidah Maryam, and he ordered her, وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ تُسَاقِطْ عَلَيْكِ رُطْبًا جَنِيًّا. For example, فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا, and that Jibreel was made to be a very well-proportioned man as he approached Sayyidah Maryam. And Sayyidah Maryam is ma'suma according to the Quran. So ma'sumin don't have to be prophets and imams only, because Allah says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاكِ وَطَهَّرَكِ وَاصْطَفَاكِ عَلَى نِسَاءِ الْعَالَمِينَ. That chose you, purified you, chose you over the women of the world or the worlds at the time. So the lady's infallible, angels are approaching her. Sayyidah Zahra, who is far greater in significance and stance and merit and virtue than Lady Maryam, peace and blessings be upon them both, does not have Jibreel come to her, can not have that divine connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course she does. Jibreel comes, and we have in our records Mushaf Fatima, and this was a source of wisdom and knowledge for her that was inherited by every single imam after her. When she passed away, when she was martyred, Amir al-Mu'mineen took this Mushaf, and then when he was martyred, Al-Hassan, likewise Al-Hussein, up until Sahib al-Asri was Zaman. In it, it didn't just describe what would happen to her children, what would happen to the Islamic nations, society, which government will rise, which government will fall. So it foretold the future, and this was from Lady Zahra, salamullahi alayha. With this was a source of knowledge for her, and she would go and disseminate this knowledge. Not necessarily Mushaf Fatima, as this is very exclusive knowledge, but the following she did. Kitab Fatima. So you have Mushaf Fatima, and you have Kitab Fatima. Mushaf is different than Kitab. A Mushaf, brothers and sisters, is, as we mentioned, like a compendium, an encyclopedia. Kitab simply means book. So it focuses on one subject, whereas an encyclopedia can focus on multiple things. The Book of Fatima, Kitab Fatima, is a collection of work that she contributed and made that has the rulings of jurisprudential laws taught by Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So when Rasulullah would educate and teach, she would jot, she would write, and she would compile this. The fiqh, so we have the work pages, manuscripts of our scholars on jurisprudential rulings, Al-Rasail al-Amaliyya, the Minhaj al-Salihin, and we have the works of our scholars, what is permissible, haram, halal, their fatawa, and all of these. Well, yeah, Lady Zahra had one as well. and it came from Rasulullah, and it's called Kitab Fatima. That was a source of knowledge. She would go and teach others, women predominantly. She would lead women's sessions, and she would teach women on the Holy Quran, areas of jurisprudence based off of these works. Very briefly, there were also two things that she possessed that embodied truly miraculous behavior. She had something called Harirat Fatima, the silk garment of Fatima al-Zahra, which had in it the names of the 12 Imams of Ahlul Bayt. How is this something miraculous? Well, obviously the Imams, all 12 of them were not born yet, but this had something that would tell us, or would tell of what would happen, that these would be the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So it had the names of Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, when Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein wasn't born yet. Al-Hussein was, but Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, Muhammad al-Baqir, Ja'far al-Sadiq, up until Sahib al-Amr, Ajrullah ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. And so this garment, silk of Fatima al-Zahra, Harirat Fatima. Then we also have what is referred to as Kurbat Fatima. A kurba is like a palm spathe. So it's like a chunk of wood from palm tree. So that chunk of wood from a palm tree is very coarse and it doesn't tear easily. It's very rough. In it, or on it rather, was written the multiple ad'iyat, du'as and supplications that we now have in Mafatih al-Jinan. Some of these supplications, their source was from this Kurbat Fatima. Amongst them was Du'a an-Nur. Many of us are probably familiar with the supplication of light, of radiance. Du'a an-Nur, originally its source was this, Kurbat Fatima. And this obviously came from the inspiration divinely sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Lady Zahra alayhi salam, as well as from sources of Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'een. And so you have Kurbat Fatima. So these are things in the possession of Lady Zahra salamullahi alayha that were sources of knowledge. She would take the information and knowledge and wisdom, disseminate it. And this is where she would teach women in society. What about men? We've all read Hadith al-Kisa, the tradition of the cloak. And what a cloak that is, that holds the 5 chosen lights of God on earth. And Hadith al-Kisa starts as such. عن فاطمة عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء أنها قالت. The hadith then commences. Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, Jabir, the companion of Rasulullah, son of Abdullah, the aide to Rasulullah in Medina, who died in the battle of Uhud. Abdullah al-Ansari, the father of Jabir, upright companion, shaheed. His son Jabir narrates a hadith he heard directly from Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam. Men can hear things from women? Yeah, what's wrong with that? She was a teacher. Jabir was her disciple. And he heard this long narration narrated by Lady Fatima salamullahi alayha. And this narration, whether you are a Sunni or a Shi'i, cannot deny its existence and authenticity. Hadith al-Kisa, all of our sources narrate that the day came, Rasulullah came home, and that he was tired from the long day, and she covered Rasulullah, then she joined them. This was before Amir al-Mu'mineen came, and Al-Hasanan, Jibreel descended, so on and so forth. All of this is narrated by Fatima Zahra, who taught it, or who at her presence was Jabir bin Abdullah. There were men, a select amount of men, the decent ones. Most of them were savages at that time, but this goes to show that Lady Zahra alayhi salam was a beacon of knowledge for men and women. This is a stance, the education, the knowledge that is clearly there. Her purpose and motive was education, enriching and enlightening a society, establishing what would hopefully become an intellectual renaissance in that society that was very backwards minded. Imagine years ago, these people were eating grass, burying children, and killing and racist and evil and crude, abrasive. And all of a sudden, they're thinkers, they're writing jurisprudence, they're philosophers. And who helped push for all of this? The Ahlul Bayt, Rasulullah, his holy household, the upright, righteous companions of the Ahlul Bayt. And so, for the sake of education, that helped produce a spring of knowledge and a society that was ridden with backwardness and idiocracy, Lady Zahra alayhi salam, her motives were genuine, as clear as it can be. And for that reason, no matter who you're related to, you cannot but want to respect this individual, want to have high reverence to that individual. In addition to this, obviously Lady Zahra is a narrator of ahadith, traditions from Rasulullah's lips, holy lips, and Rasulullah narrated, Fatima Zahra would narrate back. There is a work called Musnad Fatima Zahra, the collection of ahadith that Lady Zahra narrated. In it, a number of ahadith, hundreds of ahadith that are found that Lady Zahra narrated that we then use to formulate our theology, our worldview, our jurisprudential understanding and approach to life. Education, don't look further than Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. In it, we're really humbled, and we have to do good in her part. We have to honor that contribution that she gave. So we revere that individual. We honor this individual. In addition to that, she's also the daughter of Rasulullah, the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen. For those who really only care to look at these things, how about you add these elements of why I respect someone, in addition to, hold on, they contributed so much knowledge that had it not been for them, why would women ever, Muslim women, ever go back to a beacon of knowledge that relates to them like we do when we look back at Lady Zainab, who ironically was also a student of Lady Zahra alayhi salam, a disciple of Lady Zahra alayhi salam, daughter of Lady Zahra alayhi salam. When you want to look at inspirational sources for women who lived in a society that really did not motivate them to go and study and learn and be sources of knowledge, you will always find they are related to Sayyidah Zahra, Sayyidah Khadija, mother of Lady Zahra, Sayyidah Zahra herself, Sayyidah Zainab. What about the wives of the Imams who were scholars? Hamid al-Barbariyya, yes, she married the grandson of Lady Zahra, Imam al-Sadiq, for example. Asma bint Umays, she's a scholar in her own right, narrated a bunch of ahadith, obviously, really well respected. Yeah, the servant of Lady Zahra in her home. Sayyidah Zahra is a fountain of knowledge for men and women. And when we go back to Islamic history, we find that at the core of knowledge with any personality, especially an upright one, there is a relationship to them and Lady Zahra salamullahi alayha. So don't give me the extension, give me the source. Where did all this come from? Well, obviously from the nur of Muhammad and al-Muhammad, the manifestation of Rasulullah's wisdom, Ummi Abiha, Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha. Education, look no further than her. Resistance, power, that is something very much brushed aside. Like this, brushed aside and not even considered. Because when it's a matter that pertains to individuals of high significance, she is a Siddiqah. But then she stood in the face of the Siddiqah himself, first Khalifa. And whoever goes out against the first Caliph is in a very bad position. Because our worldview and the other schools of thought's worldview both put high reverence to the Khalifa, the just Khalifa, the God-chosen Khalifa. And so when you go against the Imam of your time, you have died 100 years of ignorance. What do we then say to Sayyidah Zahra who went against the societal Imam of that time, that society has picked, or that society had entrusted upon them? Abu Bakr, for example, the first Islamic Caliph, who we definitely will never be able to deny had a quarrel or a disagreement with Lady Fatima alayhi salam. And you're talking the most influential person. And we, living in the year of accessible knowledge and information, cannot hide all of this obvious truth. A non-Shi'i Muslim knows our stance on both Lady Zahra and the figures from the other schools of thought that we don't necessarily hold to high regard as compared to them. but we don't blatantly come out and deliberately, for purposes of condescendingly insulting other figures to hurt the feelings of other people. We don't do anything like that. That's not even of the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt. What we do rather is argue for our belief system by supporting evidence and history, and the history is there. And so we say that when you have a very influential person who the Arab nation was at his disposal, from the Arabian Peninsula to some extents at that time of East Africa, Ethiopia, portions of that has entered Islam, Yemen as well. A big chunk of land with a lot of people, at least 1 million individuals. See, over 100,000 people followed Rasulullah on the day of Hajjatul Wada, which is about the 11th year after Hijrah. So you have the last few months, 2 months before Rasulullah dies, 100,000 Muslims were at his presence, were with him. 100,000 Muslims. The amount of Muslims in the society were 1 million. If you got 1 million men and women all at your disposal, you're a powerful, powerful person. That's a strong person. That's someone you don't want to mess with. But yet you stand in front of them and reject what they say and resist and maintain your composure such that you hold your stance until you die. To the point every book of narration makes mention, dying angry with a multitude of people who took advantage of her situation. Many will bring up the issue of the incident of Fadak, the land of Fadak that was confiscated from Lady Zahra alayhi salam by the establishment at the time. In the justification of, well, I heard the Prophet say that we don't leave inheritance, us prophets of God. To which Lady Fatimah Zahra says, then what about Dawood and Sulaiman? Waratha Sulaiman, Dawood, or that Sulaiman inherited from Prophet David, being his son, he inherited it. Some have made mention that, well, this means, if you continue the verse, وَعُلِّمْنَا مَنْطِقَ الطَّيْرِ, or that Nabi Sulaiman was taught the speech of birds, so he inherited knowledge. What did ladies? That's the next ayah that talks about that Prophet Sulaiman inherited from Dawood. They say, yeah, it wasn't possessions like land and physical stuff. It was knowledge. Got a question? Can you inherit knowledge? So you study so much, okay? And then you have a child. That kid is going to have that PhD that you also got in the wisdom that you developed and the information that you had. That's why Lady Zahra, when she quoted this ayah, she's like, but what about this man? And even if you look at Yahya and his father Zakaria, who he inherited from, as clear as the Quran makes it be, even when we consider inheritance may not have been, let's just say for the sake of argument purposes, meet this argument halfway, that it was the case that Sulaiman inherited knowledge, such that he now knows how to speak to birds because of his dad. Lady Zahra says, "Ala anna al-ilma la turith," but with the condition that we all know knowledge is not inherited. So if you're going to hate me back, yeah, it was about knowledge. Knowledge cannot be inherited. It's obvious. So when one makes the argument that Rasulullah stated that us prophets never leave behind inheritance, if you dare quote this ayah that Sulaiman inherited Dawood, I'm going to respond, yeah, if you read it, finish the ayah, it was knowledge he inherited. But you can't inherit knowledge. So how does that work? And she made that statement very clear, that what knowledge is not inherited. So what do you say to that? The response came back, let me have some witnesses. I need witnesses. She's like, me, you're a lady. My children, they're children. My husband, Ali, was a witness that he left behind this as an inheritance for me. In fact, it was a gift to her. Ali ibn Abi Talib, he's your husband. That's not fair if you get your husband. Any other witnesses? At that point, Lady Zahra, salamullahi alayha, had those rights of hers usurped, definitely. But when she made that claim, she then followed it up with a powerful, legendary speech, brothers and sisters. Al-Khutbah al-Fadakiyyah. This is a sermon that can never be replicated by human beings who are not inspired by Allah. Read the Khutbah al-Fadakiyyah of Lady Zahra. She then ascends the member. So you're talking a lady publicly standing. Men and women, at this point, doesn't even matter. bashing, attacking the leaders of the ruling establishment, Abu Bakr and Umar. These were the leaders of the time. And this is the Shi'i literacy and narrative, that she stands up and gives this epic, legendary sermon, beginning by praising Allah, beginning by describing who her father was in relation to everyone standing here. If it wasn't for my dad, you guys would be Bedouins going about your day, backwards minded, fickle in your thinking. And then she begins to describe who her husband is, who she is, praising Allah and doing so. It's a long sermon, pages, but it's very powerful. And as she goes to make the sermon, the traditions mention that she, in according to the traditions, anat anna, meaning that she gave a sigh. When she gave a sigh of grief, like an of grief, everyone at the gathering in the mosque of Rasulullah began to cry, hearing that Lady Zahra is grief-stricken. When that happened, she followed it with the sermon, and people were crying from them, people crying, others wailing, and Lady Zahra alayhi salam having those rights usurped. But taking that stance, that truly symbolizes resistance, even if it's against the most powerful people at your time, even if it's to their faces. And this is a heavy thing to do. It's not the easiest thing to do. Men don't do these things. Brave, powerful men don't do these things because they're like, okay, but what chance do I stand? None of them stand an inch near the bravery that Lady Zahra has, salamullahi alayha. And so she teaches us these lessons of knowledge coupled with resistance facing oppression. Couple that together, you become a legendary leader that transcends time through your actions, solidified by your motives, which were all genuine. And we don't respect Lady Zahra just because she's related to any one individual. Many people are related to people who are good people, but they don't deserve my respect automatically. We honor and love Lady Fatimah Zahra, for she is the inspiration to all of us in areas of knowledge, in areas of resistance, in areas of power. How else did Abu Abdullah garner that resistance and strength of hayhat min nadhillah? Never ever to humiliation. Rather, dying with dignity is greater than living with humiliation, as what was made clear from Abu Abdullah's multiple traditions. He did not learn any of this except that he saw his holy mother, Fatimah Zahra, making these stances. His father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, likewise. And we find that on the days of her martyrdom, we find the Imam alayhi salam, after she had been martyred, Salman al-Muhammadi making his way. Salman, the companion of the Ahlul Bayt, the companion of Lady Zahra alayhi salam, comes to the home of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and this time he finds the house and the door open. And he is confused. Normally the door is never open publicly like that, exposing the house to the outside. People don't really want that to happen. He then requests permission by standing by the entrance, and he says, "May I enter, O family of the house?" The response came back from Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, saying, "Enter, O Salman, for the owner of the house is no longer here. Enter." He enters and he finds Amir al-Mu'mineen and Al-Hasanan together, Imam Hassan and Hussein, gathered and crying. And he finds Amir al-Mu'mineen really crying heavily. And Salman begins to say, "Ya Ali," trying to uplift the Imam. "Oh Ali, know your value and station in the eyes of Allah. Hurting yourself by crying this much, really breaking your heart, Ya Ali. Come on, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are the closest to have ever lived to Rasulullah, the closest to Allah now. Ya Ali, rejoice in that fact. Don't cry to this extent." To which Imam Ali narrated the following hadith that we all love to hear. He says to him, "O Salman, for if you knew what I lost, you would have cried the same way. I lost someone who whenever I looked at them, all my griefs and sorrow would go away. Whenever I would look at Lady Zahra, all my sadness would go, just looking. let alone talking and speaking and being at the company and comfort with her. When I look at her, all of my sadness and sorrow goes away. Sent a rose, a flower, sent from heaven, went back to heaven, left its fragrance in my mind. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayh, and this was how he expressed his saddened and broken heart. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who take inspiration from Fatima Zahra in matters of social justice, as we have seen, in matters of knowledge and education, as she has manifested, and to allow us to enter this new year with hearts open for the mahabba of Ahlul Bayt, and only allowing Ahlul Bayt's love to be in it, beginning the new year with the mother of the Ahlul Bayt, Fatima Zahra, salamullahi alayha. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the following dua of the supplications that we recite at the start of the new year. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya muqallib al-qulubi wal-absar, Ya mudabbir al-layli wal-nahar, Ya muhawwil al-hawli wal-ahwal, حول حالنا إلى أحسن الحال بمحمد وآله الأطهار والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
صلى على محمد ومحمد عظم الله أجوركم. Thank you very much, Sayyidina. We pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants her ziyarah, inshallah, in this world, and her shafa'ah in the next, inshallah.
Ameen, Ya Allah, for all of us, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, we will conclude this Majlis Aza with the recitation, sending salutations to the Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam in the form of the al-Waritha. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ولعن وأهلك أعداءهم أجمعين. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والبتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبي بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي. وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة علي بن الحسين. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة شهداء كربلاء. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الذكي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله، بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، يا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. يا أبا الفضل عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوطهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي، فلعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام، فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع ونخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. ألحقه الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Alhamdulillah, with this, brothers and sisters, we will conclude our majlis for tonight. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accept these acts of worship. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.